You know, it's a few weeks ago now, before all of this dreadful stuff that's been coming out of Canberra hit the airwaves, I talked about the need for the Prime Minister to get vision and values front and centre to try and bring us all together as a nation. And it seems like we're probably pretty united right now in a rage against what is this political machine. Now, I've been around political things since I was 14, 1974, for those playing along at home. And in my view, there should be a bunch of staff in the Prime Minister's office right now who believe they actually know it all. They should be packing up their bits and they should be going, because they've failed their boss and they're failing our country. I've been talking to a lot of people who class themselves as Liberal voters, a lot of people who class themselves as those quiet Australian voters at the 2019 federal election, and they're really not sure who they're actually going to vote for now. And the reason is this: the Prime Minister's kind of lost the agenda. People actually desperately want those values, that vision, that stuff about where we're going to land this country 25 years from now. They want to hear that from government. They don't want this distraction to continue. As awful as the reality behind these distractions, people aren't happy tonight. Over the past few years, I've also lamented on the vision that is missing here in Australia on our need for water. It's almost 4 years since this program began. Program number 1, I talked about the need to get a water plan in Australia. I talked about the idea of a Bradfield-type scheme. And some people sort of laughed and said, oh, it's just that mad bloke from Queensland. But what I don't understand is why the federal government isn't demanding action from the states. The states are the ones in charge of land management. The states should be the ones announcing plans about dams, about water. I mean, the New South Wales government blinked when a UNESCO committee, a United Nations committee, said you can't lift the Warragamba Dam wall 14 metres, even though it would have doubled the capacity of Warragamba Dam. What have we seen? In these last few days, we've seen 1.5 Warragamba Dams worth of water flowing down the Nepean and the Hawkesbury rivers through that system, flooding homes and ruining lives. And we've heard absolutely nothing from elected state governments or indeed from the federal government about water. There is no power or water in our interior. They just need to understand that. And yet governments keep talking about sending more and more people to go to regional Australia. And a recent survey found that 1 in 5 people living in Sydney and Melbourne want to go to regions. Well, but the trouble is, the regions they're talking about are Byron Bay, Coffs Harbour, the Gold Coast, Noosa. They're not talking about anything west of the Great Dividing Range. And you see, with no water, immigrants to our country, in fact, all of us are going to just stay in the cities. You can't actually solve any other problem until you've solved the water problem. If you can't wash your hands, make a cup of tea, have a shower in the morning, you're not exactly going to sit around and see whether the local regional community have sorted out childcare and housing and things like that. And now, of course, with higher power prices in this country than we had a generation ago, all we do is seemingly sell cheap imported rubbish instead of making stuff here in Australia. And there are plenty of people who are making real money out of this misery of high power prices and restrictions on access to water. Now, this La Nina event, this water event that has hit northern Australia and gone down the east coast in particular, seems to come around once every decade. It was 2011. Brisbane had a big flood, for instance. And this was the year that we should have actually been preparing to store some real large volumes of water to avoid the sort of droughts that we've had over the last 20 or 30 years. What's happened? Absolutely nothing. Now, a note from a viewer in Alderson in Tasmania, Gay, I think summed it up rather beautifully. And here's what Gay had to say. She said, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, are not exactly using guns. They're fighting with words, with ideas, with narratives. And the most deadly virus in the world right now is communism. In the past 15 years, it's snuck onto our society through corrupt politicians, shrewd businessmen, and people of power and influence. I think something in what she's saying. It sows the seeds by convincing us, the people, that lies are truth, evil is good, hatred is love, and it seems our enemies, well, are each other. Gay says, I believe there is nothing in this great reset ideology that they're trying to bestow upon us that's actually in Australia's national interest. Gay also said Australians did not ask for a dose of Marxism in our capitalism. And she said as a fifth-generation Australian, she rejects the idea of this reset that China seems to want us so badly, want us to succumb to. And people from the left of politics as well, Gay, I guess. Gay says we need to rebuild our economy, bring back all our manufacturing and building industries, export our own produce locally and internationally ASAP. And to help Australia regain some independency sooner rather than later. Well done to you, Gay. Now, look, Gay, my suggestion is that you should run for the seat of Cook. The Prime Minister the other day said that he hopes that a woman will replace him in that southern Sydney suburb seat. So sell up the Alderson home and move to southern Sydney, because the seat of Cook may well become vacant sooner than you realise. The big questions, I believe, remain very much so unanswered, and they are very simple questions. What is the Australia we're actually building? Where will we be 25 years from now? Keen to know what you think. Hashtag Hardgrave. You can write to me on Twitter, or you can write to me directly, as Gay did, gary.hardgrave@skynews.com.au.